There we go. We'll just let it be on there for a second because I forgot to push record this morning. Okay, so we're just going to talk about tables and graphs, and then when we come back on Monday, we'll review all of the 3 equations, tables, and graphs. Okay. All right. So here we go. So the x-axis, to find the x-intercept, find where the graph crosses the x-axis. Okay? And write the coordinate as x0. And then to find the y-axis, find where the graph crosses the y-axis and write the coordinate point as 0y. So we're going to practice, of course. So is it okay if I zoom in? I'm going to zoom in on each graph individually so we have, so we can see. So if I find my x-intercept, and I can abbreviate as int, x-int, so I don't have to write intercept out every time. So in order to find my x-intercept, I look at my x-axis. Here's my x-axis, right? So here's where the graph crosses the x-axis at. Okay? And it's in the form of something 0. So I just need to know where that something is. What number does it cross the x-axis at? That's all. That's all I need to put in there. What number is that where it crossed? Right there. Put in your chat box what number that is, please. Anybody? Can anybody type in the chat box what number that is? Where it crosses the x-axis at? Yes, Esta, good. Anybody else know where it crosses the x-axis at? Lala, I can't talk. The x-axis at? Oh, basketball starts today. Okay, so if you don't know, I'm going to go over it because obviously only 2 people know the answer because only 2 people have put the answer in. Here's 0, 0, right, where ooh, let's go with a different color. This is 0, 0, where the 2 axes meet, right? And if I go to the right of that point, it's positive. If I go to the left of that point, it's negative. And then I just count. 1, 2. It's back 2, so negative 2, 0. That's it. Nothing harder than that, okay? And then I want to find the y-intercept. And the y-intercept is the form 0 something. And I'm going to look on my y-axis this time. So my y-axis is the one that goes up and down. And I go to where it crosses the y-axis. And where is that located at? Anybody in the chat? Yes, Alexander. So the x value is 0, but I want to know the y value. The x value is 0. Where is the y at that point? Yes, Esta. How far down is it? So again, I can count my spaces, right, from 0, 0. If I go back here to 0, 0 again, if I count above, it's a positive, and if I count below, it's negative. So if I count below and I count, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ooh, negative 6, and that's it. 0, negative 6. Okay? Please do not forget to put things in parentheses. This is an ordered pair. It needs to be in parentheses when you write it this way. Okay? So, come on, slide. Okay, so now we're on this number 2. We're going to do exactly the same thing. So I'm going to find my x-intercept. I'm just going to go ahead and write them both out here really quick. X-intercept, which is someplace 0, and y-intercept, which is 0 someplace. And then I need to find them. So the x-intercept is on the x-axis, which is right where it crosses the x-axis, which is right there. So I'm just going to count how many places, and I'm going to count back from 0, 0. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And since I counted backwards, that's -4. And then my y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, which is right here. So I'm just going to count from 0, 0 again. So I'm going to start I'm going to start right here. I'm going to count up 1, 2. So I've got 0, 2. Okay? All right. So now it's your guys' turn to try. All right, so I have 4 graphs. I'm trying to get them both all on the graph at the same time. So remember, I just want to go over the definitions again really quick of what they are. So remember the x-intercept. The x-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis, right? Right, okay. And it should be, yes, you do, Alex. So it should be at the form some value x and then always 0. So the x-intercept will always have some number in the x one, wherever it crosses the x-axis at, and then 0. And then the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, and it's always of the form 0. So 0 is always first, and then whatever value, wherever it crosses the y-axis at. I hope that helps a little bit. Does that make sense? And I really thank you guys for even trying. If you don't know and you're still putting answers into the chat box, thank you, because at least I know that you're trying and not just sitting there not listening to me. Okay, so thank you very much. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do this. So sorry. Let's find the x-axis, the x-intercept, and the y-intercept. So my x-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis. And if you don't know which one the x-axis is, usually they're labeled, usually. So this one you can see has a little x right there. So that's the x-axis. So I'm going to go over on the, I'm going to just follow, I'm going to highlight this. Follow the x-axis right here until I find out where the graph crosses at, which happens to be right there. So what's the location of that point? Well, if I start at 0, 0, that's -1, -2, -3. So that's -3, 0. So it's at this form. So see this form up here that they said that they wanted it to form x0. So the x value is where it touches the x-axis at, which is -3. It touched the x-axis at -3. And then y is always 0 at that point. So I hope that makes a little, if I'm not making sense, please let me know so I can restate it in a different way. I don't know how I can do it, but I'll figure it out. But or let me know what you're having troubles with and I can explain it again. Okay? And then the y-axis, the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. And again, here's the y-axis. It's the one that goes up and down. And if I follow the y-axis, and I look at the y-axis, I'm going to look at the whole thing until I see where it crosses, the graph crosses the y-axis at. And it crosses it at 2. So this form, remember it says it's 0y, so this number is always 0. And my second number is where it crosses the y-axis at, which was number 2. Does that help a little bit? Okay, so we're going to try the second one now. Part B, I guess, and we're going to do the same thing. So the x-intercept, and then we have the y-intercept. And if it helps to highlight the axes, That's a good strategy. You can take your highlighter and highlight it. And then where it touches, oh no, this one touches in 2 places. Is that okay? Yeah, that's fine. It just means it has 2 x-intercepts. Is it okay to have 2 x-intercepts? Yeah, it is. It's okay to have 2 x-intercepts. What is today, you guys? The 23rd? Yeah. Okay, so this one has 2 x-intercepts. Now, I will say this. You will almost always never have more than 1 y-intercept, okay? So you should only have 1 y-intercept, but I could have 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 100 x-intercepts. I can have as many x-intercepts as infinity. I just can only really have 1 y-intercept, okay? So the most we're going to have in this class would probably be 3, and that would be like the absolute most, okay? Probably 2 would probably be the most that we'll get. So my x-axis, if I do this, right, here's my middle. I'm at -2, 0, and I'm at 2, 0. So I've got 2 different ones. Remember, my x and y intercepts always have to have a 0 in them. Always. Okay? Okay? So they're always going to have a 0 in them. So my y-intercept, again, I can highlight the, or color code it or whatever, the axes in a different color. And then here is where it's touching at. So it's -1, -2, -3, -4. So this one's in the form 0, -4. I just have to remember the forms or how to find a point on a graph. And that's how I do those 2. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and let you do C and D. C and D. Okay? Do the same thing. Okay, you guys, it looks like, here we go. Looks like here we go. My x-intercept and my y-intercept. So if I do my x-intercept, I highlight my axis. It's where it crosses the axis at, which is 3, 0. And my y-axis, I do the same thing. My y-intercept, I do the same thing. I highlight my axes, and it's where it crosses the axes at, which is there. So that's 0, 1. That's it. So we've got my x-intercept and my y-intercept. So here's my x-intercept. And we've got 2 this time. That's okay. Is that okay? That's totally cool. I've got 1 there and 1 there. So I've got -4, 0 and 4, 0. And then my y-axis is here. And my y-intercept is where it crosses that, which is right there. And I think that is 0, 4. So I've got a whole bunch of 4s there. Okay? Questions? Are we okay? We're going to find out how you are when we're working on your homework today. Okay? So, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how to find intercepts if I have a table. So now we're going to switch from graphs to tables. We did graphs first because they're the easiest to visually see. You can see where it crosses the axis. The other ones aren't hard either, but they're just a little harder to find, I guess. Okay. So we're going to talk about tables. So how to find the intercepts from tables. So for an x-intercept, it says, what is x when y equals 0? So what I'm going to do is look down the y column until I see a 0. Look to the left to see the x value and write it as x0. Okay? To find my y-intercept, that means what is y when x equals 0? So I'm going to look down the x column till I see a 0, and then look to the right, I can't even read, to see the y value. And then I'm going to write my y-intercept as, oh, there's 2 parentheses there, as 0y. So that's how we're going to do it. So we're going to follow the directions. I'm going to write my x. I'm going to write x-intercept. And I'm going to write y-intercept. Okay, so if I look down it says if I find my x-intercept, I'm going to look down the y column, which is here. So I'm going to look down there until I see a 0. Here's my 0. And so my x-intercept is going to be right here, which is 2, 0. And then to find my y-intercept, it says, what is y when x equals 0? So I'm going to look at my x column until I find 0. Oh, and here's 0 right here. And so then I'm going to look to the right, which is my number, and I can write that as an ordered pair. So my y-intercept is 0, -4. That's it. Done. Done. Okay? So same thing for part 2, x-intercept, y-intercept. Okay, so I'm going to look down my y column until I find a 0. Oh, here it is. And we've got it right here. So my x-intercept is 6, 0. Now I do need to say this. Not all tables will have an x and a y-intercept. Some might only have one or the other. Some might not have any. All the ones we've picked out for you will have both of them, but you will see some, maybe in the future, that only has one or the other and not both. So be aware of that fact that not all tables will give you both an x and a y-intercept, okay? So the y-intercept, is where x equals 0. So if I look down my table, I find x equals 0, and it's right here. So then I've got 0, 10. Okay? Questions? Do you guys think you can do this? No one's really talking to me today. So we're going to go ahead and see if you can do it. Here's 2. We'll start with 2. Okay, so for number A, I'm going to look for the zeros. I'm just going to highlight everything that has a 0 in it. That was a bad thing. Everything that just has only a 0. So the only thing that has a 0 in the first one is that line. So that means that, my x-intercept is 0, 0, and my y-intercept is also 0, 0. Okay? So if I look at the second one, any rows that only have a 0 in it, jeez. Okay, let's try this again. Is this one and this one. So now I have to decide which one's my x-intercept. Well, which one's my x-intercept is where y equals, is where what the y is 0. So this one's my x-intercept. This one's my x-intercept, and this one is my y-intercept. No, it seems backwards, where the x-intercept would be, you'd think the x-intercept would be the one with x being 0, but it's not. X-intercept is the one where x has a value, and the y-intercept is the one where y has a value. And that value on this one is 0, 30. Okay, questions? No one's asking questions today. Okay. Trying to explain it in different ways, so hopefully that'll be okay for you guys. Okay, we have the last 2 problems, and I need to just do this because I didn't fix that. Okay. Oh, all right. So let's go ahead and I'm going to highlight in my box just like I did. I'm going to try and find the ones that only have zeros in them. So in this table, I've got this one, I've got this one, and I've got this one. So I know that the one that has y's as 0 are my x's. So this is an x and this is an x. And I know the one that has x's as 0 is a y. So this one is a y. So my x-intercepts are -2, 0 and 2, 0. And my y-intercept is 0, 2. Okay? In my second box, it's a lovely day. Here we go. So I've got a zeros and zeros, the ones that only have zeros. So I know that this one is, because it's got x as a 0, this is my y-intercept. It's going to be a very long day, you guys. This is my y-intercept. And because this one has y as a 0, this is my x-intercept. So my x-intercept here is 2, 0. And my y-intercept is 0, 4. Is there any questions about how I found those? Okay, so that's the end of this portion of today. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording so that you can, if you can go back and look at it later today or tomorrow when I